Hey everyone, it's Josh, and I got a couple of things to get to today, so I want to address something before I get to the main point of this video. Now, last night I went to AllinWithAri's channel, and I haven't been on her channel in I don't know, a few weeks, something like that. And apparently, the obsessive little Reddit incel trolls are still hating on her, still calling everything she says a lie, still doing everything they can to quote unquote expose her. I mean, guys, you got to start getting lives of your own. All right. But even if this girl is a con artist, why are you spending so much time on her? I've been to some of your channels. Some of you have over 20 videos just about Ari. Some of you have made over 20 videos just about Ari. That's not exposing, that's stalking. Okay? That's what that is. And so many of you will make negative comments on our page, but it'll be the same people all the time. And a lot of you will make like 15 different comments on every video she makes. I see the same names I saw 2 weeks ago, a month ago, 2 months ago. This dude calling himself Carrie makes like 20 different comments on every video she makes. As do a whole bunch of other people. Listen, Ari has never done anything that I can say she's definitively lying about this or that. She's probably lying about some stuff. I mean, everybody on YouTube does. But I'm pretty sure that the people on the other side of this situation are doing some lying too. So, who knows what the truth is? And, Ari doesn't owe us an explanation for her past and whatever. And she didn't ask you guys to get all obsessed with her and to dig into everything about her past and be a bunch of little internet nerds and, quote unquote, expose her. So, you guys are idiots. Get a life. I would never obsess with one person over YouTube, male or female, the way you people obsess over Ari. Okay, so now for the main crux of this video. It's Sunday, so this is going to be a why I don't go to church video. Now, I've talked about before how I'm a believer in Christ, but I really don't go to church. And there's a lot of personal reasons for that. There's a lot of like past church hurt and all that sort of stuff. And that's not what I'm going to get into today, because that alone wouldn't keep me away from eventually wanting to join a church. A lot of my reasonings for joining church are as practical as they are personal. And I'm going to discuss the practical reasons today. And I've kind of alluded to some of these reasons in other videos. But I'm just going to get on with it today. Okay, so the first reason is just the whole redundancy thing that comes with going to church. And what I mean is this. Most of you watching this video have your driver's license, right? I'm assuming most of the people that watch me are grown up, so you've had your driver's license for at least a few years. Most of you have had your driver's license for 10, 15, 20 years, maybe longer. You're not still going to driver's ed class every week, right? Because there's no point in it. You know how to drive. Now, you might need an occasional refresher on some stuff, so you might refer back to your driver's manual every once in a while. There's some law that you forgot existed or something that you just want to know that you forgot about or whatever. But you're not just sitting there going to driver's ed every week because you know how to drive. It's just pointless to go to driver's ed. That's how church has gotten for me. When I go to church, after hearing about 2 minutes of the pastor speaking, I can say every word that pastor is about to say in his sermon before he says it. His words come into my mind before they come out of his mouth. And the reason for that is not because I'm psychic, not because I can predict the future, but it's because I've been to so many sermons, so many church services that I've heard them all. There's nothing new that I can hear at any church service at any time, really. So at a certain point, I realized this. And at a certain point, I thought, what am I even going here for, right? Because at a certain point, you know what the Bible says, and it's just a matter of living it. You don't need to be going to, or at least I don't need to be going to an hour-long service, and actually, if 2 hours if you include the whole worship thing. And I can't stand the worship part of the service, but that's a story for another day. But at a certain point, you've heard it all, and then it's just a matter of living your life and applying it. I get absolutely nothing out of going to a church service every week. There's nothing spiritual I get. There's nothing I get. Now, every once in a while I do, but I don't get anything out of it on a weekly basis, right? Let me give you another example. You might have a favorite song that you had back in 2016, right? And back in 2016, when that song was really hot, you were listening to it on your headphones every day. But nowadays, you don't do that anymore. You might get into the mood for that song once in a while, play it for a couple days again, a little bit of nostalgic effect, but you ain't listening to it daily or even weekly like you were back in 2016, right? And, so that's the same concept. Or maybe there's a book you read that really changed your life, right? You read this book 10 years ago. You might still refer back to that book on a semi-regular basis, but you're not reading it daily like you were 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So, for me, I don't know how to put this into different words than I already have, but for me, that's what going to church is for me. It's an exercise in redundancy, pretty much. Now, here's another thing to add on to that. This whole way of doing church that we do in America and across the world these days, where you have like the opening worship and then you have like the 45-minute to hour-long service, that's a man-made way of doing church. It's not, God never specifically prescribed that. Now, that doesn't mean it's wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. God allows you to do church any way you want to. So if you want to do church like that and you're still getting something out of it, these weekly church services that are set up like this, then by all means go. But the churches have made it out to where this is the only way you can really do church. And if you do it some other way, like by yourself or off in a house or whatever, then you're not really getting the full benefit of like church. And it's just not true. But churches have convinced the rest of the believing world that this is the proper way to do church, this particular structure. And the fact is, different people learn best in different ways. Some people do learn best with that hour-long weekly service in that format. Others learn better by interaction in somebody's home. Others learn better a different way. So church isn't for everybody, and believers would really do well to start accepting that. Instead of questioning someone's faith or someone's commitment to God because they're not attending church every week, consider that maybe the way today's church is set up aren't the way that person learns the most effectively. Quit judging that person. Now, other people will say, and a lot of people have said this to me, like, well, church is where you might find your future wife, a good woman to marry, blah, 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 so you should go for that reason. And I mean no disrespect by what I'm about to say, but I have never seen a shred of evidence that Christian girls, on the whole, make better girlfriends or wives than regular girls out in the world. Never seen any evidence of that. I'm not telling you that there's no good Christian girls who make good wives. There certainly are. And they're there in every church. But what I'm saying is that I haven't never seen any evidence that the church has a monopoly on such women. There's good women in every church, but there's good future wife material in every church, but there's good future wife material in every other aspect of life too. You know what I mean? For every one girl that might be a good future wife material at church, you can meet another girl that could be good future wife material at, the local basketball game or whatever. You see what I'm saying? Or whatever other clubs you belong to, the local sorority or fraternity or whatever. You get the idea. So I would never go to church for that reason, just because I don't believe for one second that churches have this lock on good women, and that when you go into church, it's just full of these good marriageable women that are so much better than the other women in the world, right? It's not true. It's a ruse. It's something people say to get you into church. I was going to touch on another topic. Oh, this is more on personal, and I said that I wouldn't get into personal business here. This is more personal than practical, but I'll say it anyway. I don't like the way a lot of church people handle business. What I mean by that is I don't like the way they go about handling conflict and potential conflict. In a lot of cases, in many cases really, when someone at church or a group of people at church hear something negative about you, they don't even come to you to get your side of whatever story is out there. They pretty much just shut you out, and you have no idea what even happened. All you know is everybody is shutting you out, and you were just getting along and laughing and talking with these people for the past 6 months, and now all of a sudden it seems like you don't exist, and they're not even telling you nothing. So you got to spend a month figuring out what's even going on. Then you're not even sure the story that you're hearing is true. So you don't even know what's going on around about you, to the point where, so you can't even really fight it. And that happens a lot. And I don't respect that. That's happened to me plenty of times. I've seen it happen to others at church hundreds of times. And that's just such a cold and cruel way of dealing with any person. I'm a firm believer that if you've got a problem with somebody, or you heard something about someone you don't like, that person, you approach them like a man and ask them about it. At least get their side of the story before you make a decision about it. Don't wait for your pastor to say it's okay to talk to this person again or whatever. Because your pastor never even approached this person in the first place most of the time. So most Christian men do not handle their business like men. They do not handle their conflicts like men. And, the thing about conflict, too, is that there's so much conflict at churches, because there's so many reasons people at church can make up to just dislike you or to have a problem with you. Things that you never have to deal with out there in the real world. I mean, there's so many, eggshells to walk on and this and that. So, it's hard to explain. You have to have been in it to see what I'm talking about. But there's just a lot. People in churches can turn on you any minute for any reason. Now, will everybody turn against you over something like this? No, but a lot of people will. And again, just the cold, harsh way they do it. They don't even come to you about whatever their problem is with you, or whatever they're hearing, or whatever. They just, one day you just don't exist. I don't respect that. I don't respect that in anybody. But churches do it, and they almost act, they're not even ashamed that they do it. They almost act like this is a virtue to conduct themselves this way. I don't conduct myself that way. I face my conflicts like a man. And I don't feed into gossip about people. And when I do, I end up asking the person, hey, I heard this about you. What's this? Why are people saying this about you? I consider another person's side of the story first. But again, Christian men don't conduct their business like men at all. There's a few that do, but most of them do not. So that's another reason I don't go to church, because I know anytime some kind of conflict arises, it's going to be handled like a real hush-hush, where people talk behind your back, but when you're in their presence, they have nothing to say. And I can't deal with that. I don't respect that. But anyway, back to the practical stuff. So I've just to reiterate, going to church is redundant. Listen, there's things I'm working on right now, self-improvement, daily affirmation, stuff like that. But the daily affirmations that I'm reading to myself now, I'm not going to be reading these same affirmations to myself 5 years from now. I mean, I am, but I'm not going to be doing it daily. Because at a certain point, like, okay, you've internalized this, it's time to live it. What are you going to get out of just keep hearing the same stuff over and over again? So that's what church is to me. It's just at this point, I don't get nothing out of it from a practical standpoint. So even if none of the church hurt had happened, and even if Christian men handled their business like men, and even if all that was in place, there'd still come a point when going is just redundant. You know, the funny thing is, too, you know where we get the church model from? We get the church model from the Jewish temple model. It's very closely based on that model. And that's not the model that Paul and Peter tried to set up. You know, the original Jewish temple model, you realize God only expected people to go to the Jewish temple, which is the Old Testament version of church, 3 times a year. Now, most people went like 5 or 6 times, but it was only required like 3 times. This every week thing of listening to a sermon didn't start till the in-between time, that intertestamental period when the Pharisees and Sadducees and stuff started taking over. So they made that stuff up. And then after Paul and the original apostles died, the Catholic Church and the other Christian sects that were hungry for power started using that model and bringing that model to Christianity. So this every week going to church thing is something that was basically borrowed from the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all these sects that Jesus absolutely hated. And it was something that was used to, you know, pretty much just control and manipulate people. And it was something that was used to sort of lord power over people, both in a legal sense and in like a psychological sense. And that still happens today. Like, where we didn't see you at church this weekend. How's your spiritual walk? It still happens today, right? So the church model that we have, it's not really of God. And again, there's nothing wrong with going to a church service every week. Just understand that only some people learn best in that environment. So that's not for everybody. It's not for every believer. And if other believers don't do it like that, we got no place to judge them. But either way, these are the reasons I don't go to church, like the main practical ones anyway. That's all for today. Cash App link down below. Please show your love. Talk to you guys soon.